June. Um, so I would like to welcome you all. And first of all, I would like to welcome Charles Browne. He's
Charles
based
Browne.
in Japan. Okay, correct me if I mispronounce the name of your university. Meiji University, Japan.
It's difficult to say. Meiji Gakuin University.
Okay.
That
I'm
one,
not
that
very
one.
familiar with Japanese names. I'm really, really sorry for that.
No
So today I
worries.
would like to welcome him for this exciting event. He is going to give you many practical things about vocabulary instruction, how to use the academic word list, and a million other things. Okay. My comment before we begin is that I don't know, I don't think this applies to every university, to every EAP program, but this is something I have faced and I've seen, is that there is no so much focus on vocabulary. Sometimes it tends to be a little bit neglected because we have to cover so many things, and sometimes we leave vocabulary instruction and we leave vocabulary to the hands of our students, mostly for self-study. So this webinar is going to show you many useful tools, how to use them in your EAP classrooms, and how, I think it's time to deal with vocabulary. I'm trying to do that at the moment with my environmental science students. I'm trying to add vocabulary instruction. And I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Charles. Welcome.
Thank you very
And now I'm
much.
going to disappear, okay? If you have any questions, post them in the chat box.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that very nice introduction, and thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure. I love talking about our word lists and talking about our work. If you're not familiar with it, we call it the NGSL project, the New General Service List project. I've been working on this for a little more than 10 years now, and we've developed many corpus-based word lists. We've tried to create them in a way that they fit together so they can, sort of a modular approach. And the idea is to be efficient and systematic in helping students to develop their vocabulary, and of course to help teachers as well. Let me start by sharing my screen. Let's see if I can get that. Okay, so all right, so now in order to do that, you can, I take it you can see my screen. Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Now let me just I just want to make sure I have the Zoom window open so I can see all of you guys as well. All right, so on this first screen, you can see, of course, the title. You can also see my university, and I have actually many free websites and tools, probably 8 or 9, but I just put a couple of them up here that are relevant, especially to today's talk. And probably the main stop, if you're interested in what I'm talking about, is newgeneralservicelist.org. And many of our other free resources are available directly from that. Okay, now let me see if this is going to let me forward. Now, just quickly, a few words is that not only am I a specialist in second language vocabulary acquisition, but I'm also a specialist in online learning. And I unfortunately picked 2020 to be my sabbatical year. I was supposed to be traveling Europe and presenting about my research, and of course, because of COVID, all of those plans had to be canceled, but they wouldn't let me cancel my sabbatical. So last year, and I think this year as well, has become, an era of online learning. For most of us, not online learning. For most of us, it's been emergency remote teaching. And so the reason I mention this here is that so many of the tools we've developed for the new General Service List project long before COVID were designed to be utilized online. So I think in that sense as well, you know, we're you know, the resources are going to be useful for you. And I like this quote because many people who don't like online learning, worry, have the fear that technology is going to replace teachers someday, but that's absolutely not the case. It's impossible because what we do as teachers is so personal and so meaningful. But it is true that teachers who are comfortable using technology are going to be the ones that are going to lead us forward, and people who don't know or refuse to use technology are going to have a difficult time for sure. So for me, and this is going 25 years of doing online learning. I've had many difficult situations where it hasn't gone well, where I was working in jobs where they were doing online learning improperly, but almost always the problem was that there was too much of a focus on technology and not enough thought given to pedagogy. So for me, and for all of the resources I've developed, pedagogy is absolutely the starting point. And this is really what drove me to become if you want to call it that, an expert in second language vocabulary acquisition, corpus linguistics, and online learning. And many of the resources I've been developing are certainly pedagogy based. Now, two of the problems that have concerned me, I've been in Japan since 1985, so 35 years. And for two problems that existed and were very bad 35 years ago and are still bad even today are, number one, that Japanese students don't have enough vocabulary, and the vocabulary they do have is not the proper vocabulary for them as language learners. And second, that the reading materials that are utilized in the classroom are usually way above the student's level, and that causes problems as well. If you haven't really done the research, just an interesting fact is that the English language is tremendously vast, more than 600,000 words in the largest dictionary, Oxford English Dictionary, OED, 600,000 words in the English language. It's an overwhelming number, but fortunately, not all of the words in the English language are created equally. Some occur much more frequently than others, and some are known and some are not known. If we do research on the average vocabulary size of adult native speakers of English, the numbers that consistently come up are somewhere between 20 and 30,000, 30,000 being the number that is often attained by native speaker college graduates. So 30,000, when you think about that compared to 600,000, that means that on average, a native speaker of English only knows about 5% of the language, which is really good news for language learners and for teachers, because it means we can ignore 95% of the English language. So that sounds pretty good. That sounds like very good news, and it is good news. But the problem is that even after many, many years of studying English, most second language learners don't have 30,000. In fact, Japanese students, even after 12 years of studying English as a required subject in elementary school, junior high, senior high, and college, even after 12 years of studying English, they only know somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 words, which is only 10% of what native speakers know. So this is a big problem in Japan. But you might think to yourself, well, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 words is enough. And this is really where we start to talk a little bit about corpus linguistics. Now, if you know the first 1,000 most frequent words of the English language, you'll know about 75% of the words on a page of general English. Here's a sample of a college textbook passage on the topic of forestry. And what we can see is that if you know the first 1,000 words, you know about 75% of the words on the page, because those words occur over and over again. In this particular example, 15 words are missing. So the question is, looking at this passage, can you read easily? Can you read and guess from context? I mean, that's what teachers always tell their students. Please don't use a dictionary. Please read and guess from context is what we tell them. Can you do it with this text? I would say the answer is probably no. I would say, I would guess that most of you are saying you can't even get through the first sentence. So 75% is clearly not enough. But let's look at what happens if you go to 2,000 words. Instead of, if you knew had a vocabulary size of 1,000, this is what it would look like. If you double that, which is getting close to what Japanese college students know, instead of 15 missing words, now there's only 9 missing words. You've actually, you're getting about 85% coverage instead of 75% coverage. So it should be easier to read. But what you can see here is that, in fact, it's still not easy to read. 85% is not enough to be able to read and guess from context. If you jump up to about a vocabulary size of about 5,000 high frequency words, then you're getting somewhere between 95, 96% coverage. And in this case, now there's only 1 missing word and much, much easier to read, right? So what we can see here is that something is different, once you get up to this level. And this takes us to the research on vocabulary thresholds. And what we can see, what researchers have found is that below 80%, if you know less than 80% of the words on the page, you almost have to give up. Reading is basically next to impossible. If you know 90% of the words on the page, Bhatia Laufer's research showed that this is the absolute minimum. At 90%, you will get about half of the students in the class will be able to read and guess from context, but half of the students will still struggle. 95%, the previous slide was 95%. That's the level where almost all learners will be able to read without the help of dictionaries. So that also is a very important threshold. But the number that recently has been talked about a lot is 98%, because 98% to 99% coverage is the level where you can read for pleasure. So not just read and guess from context, but to be able to read smoothly and quickly, almost effortlessly, and to enjoy the reading process. That's 98, 99%, right? So what we have in Japan, and I think this exists in other countries as well, is that the English reading materials that they use is too hard. If you know 2,000 words, the first 2,000 most frequent words of the English language, and you try to read Time magazine, you'll know about 80, 81%. Again, we said 81% is not enough, but just so you know, Time magazine, a magazine for educated native speakers, 80% coverage. If you go for an English newspaper, an English daily, this is the Japan Times, that's one of the most popular ones in Japan, the coverage goes up a little bit more. It's easier than Time magazine. They use fewer difficult words. And so 2,000 words will give you about 85% coverage. If you were to try and read a novel, in fact, the most popular novel in Japan for many, many years has been Harry Potter. I don't have that slide. Sorry, I lost it. But with Harry Potter, you can actually get more than 90% coverage. 91 with my new general service list, you get about 93% coverage with just 2,000 words. So native speakers can read an awful lot if they have the first 2,000 most frequent words of English. But look what happens when we look at the difficulty of Japanese high school texts. These are the English textbooks that are approved by the Ministry of Education, that are required by the Ministry of Education to be used to teach English in high school. And what we can see is that for the official textbooks, students are only getting somewhere between 71 and 79% coverage, depending on the textbook, but less. So what we have here is this odd situation where Japanese English textbooks made for non-native speakers are harder than native speaker materials, and that's a big problem. So as you remember, the minimum threshold for reading is 90%. But we're hoping for 95 or 98%. And this brings us to my work. And that is, basically trying to create efficient shortcuts for students. Native speaker vocabulary size is 30,000 words. That's not a realistic goal for most second language learners. So trying to cut down from 30,000 to much, much smaller, more reasonable numbers, and creating short, efficient lists of vocabulary words that will get them to the point where they know more than 90%. Because once you get above 90%, that's the point where students are independent. That's where they can read and guess from context, where they don't need a dictionary, where they don't need a teacher, where they can begin to read and understand. So this is kind of what we're trying to do. And over the past 10 years, we've created 7 different word lists, all corpus-based, assessment tools, learning tools, and analytical tools. So to begin with, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to some of to all of our word lists. So the first word list is called the new general service list, but the new general service list, the word new implies that there was an old one, and in fact there was. The original general service list was published by Michael West in 1953, but actually the work that he did, the first version of the list was published in 1936. So there was actually 17 years of work and development before they finalized the list, and the final version was published in 1953. Many famous linguists from around the world, Thorndike, Mackey, Palmer, Horn, all of these really amazing linguists were working on this project. It was a multi-year project. They had funding from the Carnegie Corporation. They created what, if you don't know much about corpus linguistics, 2.5 million words sounds like a lot of words, but some of the big corporate today are more than 10 billion words. So 2.5 million words is quite a small number, but you have to realize that all of the corpus work today, including my own, we're able to take advantage of the power of computers and scanners and OCR software. But back in the 1930s, when Michael West was doing this, there were no computers. So they did this by hand. The most frequent word of the English language is the word the. It occurs about 6 or 7% of all of the words on a page. Imagine going through 2.5 million words of text and counting every example of the, and then moving on to is, and then moving on to something else. It took 17 years. So anyhow, what they got in the end was about 2,200 word families, 3,600 lemmas, and that gave about 80% coverage for general texts. And it was a remarkable work. But when I found out about this, this list, I was studying, doing my master's and PhD under Paul Nation, and I thought this was amazing. So immediately I brought the old GSL into the classroom and started teaching it to my students. And although it was great at some levels, the closer I looked at it, the more I realized there were some problems. You know, the list was getting old, it was getting dated. The size of the corpus wasn't big enough. And 80% just wasn't enough to get students to the level I thought was necessary. You know, we want to get them above 90% so they can be independent. So basically we wanted to sort of attack those 3 problems. And the other thing to mention is that word lists that are based on corpora basically reflect the time the corpus was made. English language use changes quite dramatically, actually, over time. And what we have in the old general service list is a corpus that was collected from texts that were largely pre-1900. 1936 was when they first published it. So most of the texts in it were 1800, 1700 texts. And so what we could see, what I could see is that the old general service list and my list as well, the new general service list, is supposed to be a list of the most important, most useful words for second language learners of English. And what you could see in the old general service list is there were a lot of words that didn't seem like they fit that description of being the most important words. So for example, the word plow and mill and spade and cultivator, how often do those words come up for your students? Probably not that much. 150 years ago, yes, agriculture was a much more important part of our lives, but not now. So that, clearly needed to be updated. Sea travel words, sailor, or vessel, merchant. 1930s is pre-automobile era and train era. Well, maybe trains were there, but not as much plane travel, right? So things have changed. Religion words, lots and lots of religion words in the original general service list. And these are all great words, but they're not the most important words for second language learners anymore. 100 years ago, many of the schools of education were funded by missionaries. And so the texts that were often religious texts. And you can see also words like telegraph and chimney and coal and gaiety and shilling, just not as important for second language learners these days. So the new general service list, which we published in 2013, about 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, is 2,800 words, which is less than 10% of the size of a native speaker's vocabulary size. So with less than 10% of the words of a native speaker's English, we were able to get usually about 92, sometimes even more than 92% coverage for newspapers, magazines, and books of general English. So it's quite high. That's a good solid 7 or 8% higher than the original general service list. We used the Cambridge English corpus. We were able to get full access to the Cambridge English corpus, and we took the Cambridge English corpus is about 2 billion words. We took about 10%, about 273 million words out of that with subsections that we thought were important for second language learners. And we were able to get 92% coverage. Now, one thing to just briefly talk about is the difference between word families and lemmas. And the old general service list was kind of word family based, where our list and many of the other modern lists today are more either lemmatized, or some people use the word phlegma or modified lexeme. And one of the problems that we had, the creators of the NGSL, was that there's often an assumption in the word family approach that if someone knows the head word, for example, accept, that automatically we can assume that students know all of the other forms of the word, that they will recognize and know the other forms like acceptability, unacceptable, acceptance, accepting. It's a nice, clean and easy assumption to make, but the research actually doesn't show that to be true. One of my colleagues, Dr. Culligan, he and I did most of these word lists together, but he's an expert in item response theory, IRT, and he collected difficulty data for thousands of Japanese students for thousands of high frequency words. And what he found is that students did not learn, they did not understand the other forms of a word automatically when they knew the head word. So you see the word accept has a difficulty of negative 2.9, but acceptable and unacceptable have a radically different difficulty index, 0.5, negative 0.5, negative 0.2. And then acceptance is also radically different from that, about positive 0.57. So what that means is that students will learn the word accept, but they won't recognize any of those other three words as being part of accept on average. but that at some point later in their interlanguage development, about the same time, they learn acceptable and unacceptable as being part of accept, but they still don't recognize acceptance until a much higher level. So this is one of the reasons why we took this approach with all of the word lists in the new general service list. So to compare the old general service list to the new general service list, we had to kind of make sure that both lists were lemmatized in the same way. And what you see is that the new general service list is about 2,800 lemmas. The old general service list is about 3,200. It only got about 84% coverage, whereas we're getting more than 92%. And with, as you will see, if we get to the research part of this presentation, the coverage is actually quite a bit higher than 92% for listening materials like movies and TV shows, popular movies and TV shows. So this is just for written English. Okay, so how is this possible? This has to do with a mathematical principle known as Zipf's law. And basically what the law says is that frequency decreases with rank. And no matter how much I read the next sentence, I never can really understand it. But it says more precisely, frequency is inversely proportional to rank. And unless you're a mathematician, that probably won't make automatic sense to you. So what I've done is created one or two slides that have a more visual representation of what Zipf's law is. What you can see here is just a simple chart. You know, as I said, the word "the" is the most frequent word in the English language, makes up about 6 or 7% of all the words in a written text. If you were to know just the top 10 most frequent words of the English language, most of them function words, you'd have about 25% coverage. Top 100 would give you about 50%. Top 1,000, 75%. The old GSL, about 80%. The new GSL, 92%. And then up to about 8,000, the coverage is really, really, really high. And then the remaining 590,000 words only gives an additional 2% coverage. So if we make a visual chart to represent this, the following slide is based on a 10 million word sample of the Cambridge English corpus. And what you can see in this slide is that if you knew the first 2,000 most frequent words in that corpus, in that 10 million word sample, those 2,000 words would occur again and again and again, and those 2,000 words would make up about 83% of all the words of the 10 million. So basically, 83% means 8.3 million out of 10 million is the same 2,000 words occurring again and again and again. If you learn the next 2,000 most frequent words, if you double your vocabulary size from 2,000 to 4,000, you get another 5%, and now you're up to 88%. And next 2,000, 3%, next 2,000, 2%, and 1%. Now, if you were to draw a line from the top of the blue box to the top of the green box to the yellow and so on, if you just draw a line to connect all those boxes, that line is known as a Zipfian curve. So what we can see is that the first few thousand words are ultra frequent and thus ultra important. You know, if you're a student of English, do you want to study, if you're going to spend 10 years studying 2,000 words, do you want to study the purple words? No, because you'd only get 2% coverage. You want to study the blue words first. And so this is, you know, really, you know, what corpus linguistics is all about, is identifying the words that students are most likely to meet and then teaching those words first. And that's really what the new general service list project is. The new general service list is in yellow. And I put it in yellow because I consider that to be core daily vocabulary. These are the words that everybody, every language learner, regardless of their purpose, should be learning those words first, because they occur everywhere in daily life. But depending upon your purpose, if you have a special purpose for learning English, for example, you're going to go on to a university, or you're going to go into the business world, or you're going to be a medical doctor, then we can create special purpose word lists to teach in conjunction with the NGSL, and those are the green lists. So, and I'll explain those in a few minutes. And then we do have two lists that are a subsection of the NGSL, which is the spoken English and the children's English lists. And we'll sort of get into all of those little by little. So why do I want the NGSL to be yellow? Why do I want that to be taught first always? That's because those words occur everywhere in students' daily life. It's just not that helpful for students if they, for example, if they were to study only academic English or only medical English. Very often what happens is they're able to, the students are able to deal with complicated materials in their field, but they are not able to deal with daily English. I was working with one group of teachers in Qatar, a nursing school. And what they were finding, they were teaching nursing English words. And many of the nurses, many of them from the Philippines, I believe, and from other countries as well, would be able to talk about medical things, but they wouldn't be able to converse with the patients. They struggled because they didn't have the daily English down. So getting that, those first sort of core general English words in, as well as the special purpose words, putting those two together makes it very powerful, because what it does is it helps the students to deal with English in their daily lives, as well as in their field of study, their specific field of study. Okay, so the specific purpose vocabulary, special purpose vocabulary, the first one, probably of most interest to you, is the new academic word list, which oh boy, that's the wrong publication date. We actually published it in 2013. I think that's a typo. But the new academic word list was published the same year as the new general service list, which was also published in 2013. And I'm sure that most of you have not heard of the new academic word list, because the new general service list is not widely used in Europe yet. But I was going to ask the host to run a quick poll and ask you which, if any, academic word list you're using. Can we do that now? Who is hosting? Okay, yeah. So gee, there should be a fourth choice. I think the fourth choice needs to be none of the above. Well, this is exactly, well, actually, I expected more to be the AVL, but this, clear. This is, whoops, Coxhead is spelled wrong. Coxhead should be COXHEAD. Now, Avril Coxhead's academic word list is actually a fantastic list, and Avril is a good friend of mine. But the reason we made a new academic word list is because her list, her AWL, was designed to go with the old GSL. So the old GSL was step 1 and her AWL was step 2. The problem is, as we know, the old GSL was quite dated. So we made a new general service list and it didn't overlap perfectly with hers. So we needed a new academic word list. So the only reason we made a new one was not because we didn't think Avril's list was good. It's because her list didn't fit with our list well. But you can see about 80% using Avril's list, which is fantastic. And I'm surprised only 2 people using the Davies list, Davies and Gardner's list, because that's a very good list as well. And very happy to see that some of you are using our list. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So, okay, so okay, there we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to just give you a brief description of the academic word list. And what the new academic word list is based on a 283 million word academic corpus. Okay. And what we're getting is a total of 92% coverage for the NGSL plus the NAWL, which doesn't actually sound that good, does it? Because just the NGSL gives 92% coverage for general English. But what you can see is that the NGSL's coverage drops down to about 86% for academic English. And then the 960 academic words gives you another 6%, bringing you back up to 92%. Most of our other special purpose word lists are in the high 90s, 97%, 96%, 99%. The reason the new academic word list is so low is because academic English is very, very hard to predict. This is a general academic word list. So that means we are trying to cover dozens of different majors, engineering majors and nursing majors and liberal arts majors. If you think of a large university, there might be 30 or 50 different kinds of specialized genres. And so it's very hard to come up with a core list that gives very high coverage. But we were able to get above that 90% threshold, 92% threshold with our word list. And let me get to the next slide here. Now, oh boy, where, that's not good. Hold on a second. There we go. That's the slide I was looking for. So the academic word list, the new academic word list, 248 million words of it comes from the Cambridge corpus. So we utilize the academic subsections of the Cambridge corpus, but Brent and I didn't feel that this was enough because our students often were struggling with academic lectures. And we realized that presented a specific challenge for many students many foreign students studying in English-speaking university settings. So what we did is we added 1.5 million words from the MyCase corpus, which is the Michigan Corpus of Academic Spoken English, and then we also took another 1.5 million words from the British Academic Spoken English course, the base corpus. So there's about 3 million words of oral academic English in there. We also created a corpus of 36 million words by basically buying more than 100 top-selling academic textbooks from various genres, and then cutting the bindings off and then scanning them and OCRing them and then putting that in the corpus as well. And so it's a pretty balanced, at least for a first attempt, corpus. And we were able to get pretty good coverage. If you look at the old GSL versus the new GSL, actually it's 92%, 84% versus 92% was the old coverage figure, the new coverage figure. And when we look at the academic corpus, 283 million words, if you combine the old GSL and the old AWL, you get about 87% coverage, and the new general service list and the new academic word list gives about 92% coverage. So in every case, the word lists that we're making are getting higher coverage than the ones that we're trying to replace. But after we published the general service list and the academic word list, then we started to work on other things. And one of the high stakes exams in Japan is the Toeic test. And though none of us are fans of the Toeic test, we did realize that many of our students were dealing with this problem. And I realized that test English, when compared to general English, test English when compared to other genres, is a very tight and narrow and easy to predict slice of English. And so my colleagues and I, Brent Culligan and I, talked about the idea of creating a corpus of TOEIC English, and we expected that we would be able to get more than 92% coverage. The NAWL gave 92%, but with our TOEIC service list, which was published in 2015, that's the correct date, we're actually able to get like an astonishing 99% coverage. That shouldn't be possible because we're talking only a total of 4,000 words, 2,800 NGSL words and 1,200 TOEIC words. If you combine them together, you're getting 99% coverage for the latest version of the TOEIC exam. And please also note that the NGSL is actually a very good starting point for the TOEIC exam, because instead of 92% for general English, when we go to TOEIC English, it's giving about 94% coverage. So it's a very good starting point for preparing for an exam like the TOEIC. And what we, hold on a second. So I think I'm going backwards. That's the problem. Okay, so the TOEIC service list, it's a 1.5 million word corpus. It's fairly small, but that's because the TOEIC preparation materials and the TOEIC exams that we were able to get copies of represent there's fewer texts available, but we got just about everything we could get our hands on, and that's what we came up with. And what I wanted to use, just show you as an example for the TOEIC service list, is sort of a sample of how the modular approach works. What we're seeing is if you combine NGSL and the TOEIC, you're getting 99% coverage on the latest versions of the TOEIC exam. But even subsections, just subsections of the NGSL is helping students to pass certain thresholds. Just the first two levels of the NGSL, that's about the first 1,100 words, the most frequent words on the NGSL, gives 99% coverage of Japanese high school entrance exams, and the whole NGSL is giving 95% coverage of the center exam. And so what we're suggesting is that you can mix and match depending upon your needs or your students' needs or their goals, and that even just subsections of the list are actually quite helpful in attaining very good results. Okay, so let's go to the business word list next. Now, the business service list was also published the same year as the TOEIC service list. Now, TOEIC is supposed to be a test of business English. That's what they advertise themselves at. They say the TOEIC is a test of business English. So if TOEIC is business English and our TSL is giving 99% coverage, why did we go through the trouble of publishing a business service list the same year as the TOEIC service list? And the reason is because TOEIC is not a good test for real English proficiency. There are many examples in the literature, both research-oriented as well as anecdotal, where people have mastered and gotten very high scores on the TOEIC exam, but still are not functional in business settings. They're not functional for written business English, for example, emails. They're not functional in business meetings. They're not functional in many different settings. And so I wanted to help my students pass the high stakes exam, but at the same time, I wanted to help people who really wanted to study real business English, who were going to work for English speaking companies and needed to be able to deal with real business English. So that's why we created a separate corpus of general business English. And what you see in our based on our business English corpus, we were able to come up with a list of 1,700 business words that, when combined with NGSL, gives about 97% coverage. That's very high coverage. It's quite good. And this corpus is based on a combination of the British National Corpus, business subsection, internet crawlers, grabbing business web pages, business magazines, business newspapers, business textbooks, 64 million words. So it's quite a big one. And those are, actually, there's one more list I'll tell you about in a minute, one more SP list that just came out a few weeks ago. But for the ones that I've talked about so far, it's not really that important, but just to let you know that there is some overlap between our SP list. None of our lists, none of them overlap at all with the NGSL, because we think the NGSL should be step one. Core general core general English should always be step one. And step two is the green SP list, so academic or TOEIC or business. Now, the reason we allowed for overlap between the SP list is that we believe that most students and most teachers will not be teaching more than one SP list at the same time. So we allowed for overlap in that particular situation. Another SP list that we published at the end of 2020, I think in December of 2020, is called the fitness word list. And the reason for creating a fitness word list is that actually I was doing some consulting for a chain of gyms that wanted to open in Japan, as a famous American chain of gyms, and they wanted to open an English-speaking gym in Japan, where English would be the medium of instruction. And they wanted to identify what were the most frequent fitness words, and then have their instructors use those words. And so I agreed to do this project for them, but I said, I'll do it only under the condition that you allow me to offer the list for free to the public as well. So they have a proprietary version that I developed for them. And I was able to also develop another list called the Fitness English List, which is about 10 million words, and basically has a wide range of categories related to fitness and offers very high coverage. These are some of the subcategories that they wanted in the list, and it's pretty, has a lot of fitness videos as well. So it's very, very current, very, very relevant. And what we're seeing is about 98% coverage with only 600 additional words. So, again, very low number, less than 4,000 words, but very, 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 very high coverage. Now, another list that we developed is called the NGSLS, and the NGSLS is a list of high frequency spoken English words. It's only 700 words, and it's a subset of the NGSL. And this list, actually, we were asked to make by a university in Japan that liked the new general service list. This is back in 2014 or so. And they said, yeah, Dr. Browne, this is a great list, the NGSL, but our program is focusing on spoken English. And we noticed that 3 of your subsections of the NGSL are spoken English, the radio English, the spoken English, which is unscripted spoken English, and TV. And they asked us, could we possibly do the frequencies for just those 3 subsections? And that's what the NGSLS is taking those 3 subsections. And what we're seeing is something quite remarkable. To get to 90% coverage for the original NGSL, you need 2,100 words. About 2,100 of the 2,800 words will get you to 90% coverage. But for the spoken subsection, when you're looking at spoken English, you only need 700 words to get to 90% coverage. And this is because in spoken English, we tend not to use difficult words, certainly not compared to written English. And so this list has been very useful for programs around the world that are focusing on developing spoken English rather than written English, productive knowledge rather than receptive knowledge. And then the final list, we just published this maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, is called the New Dolce list, the NDL, and that's children's English, English for young learners. And so the New Dolce list, like the new general service list, is basically updating a very old and well-known list. The old original Dolce list was published in 1936. And it was a list of 220 function words and 95 nouns, about a little over 300 words, that were said to cover between 50 and 75% of the words used in the United States among, I think it was first graders and second graders. So it wasn't corpus-based, but it was, it was a very careful study of textbooks from about 100 years ago used by native speaker young learners. And as I, developed more word lists, I realized that there were so many schools in Japan and so many publishers like Pearson and Cambridge and Longman and Oxford were using the old Dolce list to make materials and to teach young EFL learners and ESL learners, and that was not a good situation, because the original Dolce list wasn't designed for EFL learners. It was designed for native speakers and to help them develop sight recognitions of words that they already knew. So the NDL, the new Dolce list that we developed, is designed more for helping non-native speakers, and so the corpus reflects that. And we're focusing less on sight recognition, and more on basic understanding of the words as a first step. And that's where the difference lies. Currently, the version 1 of our NDL is about 2.5 million words. And you can see the makeup represents children's graded readers, children's EFL textbooks, picture books, which are for L1, like sort of like Cat in the Hat, Dr. Seuss kind of things, EFL textbooks, and then also a big chunk of it is children's YouTube videos. And we were able to identify what were the most popular YouTube channels for children, utilizing this Statista website. And we were able to get very, very high coverage. And we found that the function words, the sight words, to use the language of the old Dolce list, represent only 129 words, represented about half, gave about half the coverage. So the original Dolce list was said to offer 70% coverage. But if we stopped our new Dolce list at 315, the same 315 words, we're already at plus 8%, 78% coverage. So even if we just kept the list the same size, we're already a good solid 8% ahead of the original list. But we believe that 315 words is not that useful a target, because 78%, even 78%, is not enough for students to be able to read materials independently, to be interacting with materials without a dictionary. So we wanted to help students to get to at least 90%. So we extended the word list to 876 words. I think it's now 875 words, but that's the point at which we're reaching 90% coverage. Okay. Now, I've been talking for close to an hour, and I've gone through an introduction to the word lists. What I'm going to do next is to start talking about the various online tools that we've developed. We've developed, if you go to our website, newgeneralservices.org, you can download for free. All of our stuff is open source and free. So you can download all of the word lists. We've written definitions in easy English and easy Japanese. You can download those. There's access to the research articles on our word lists. What I want to spend more time talking about is the free online learning applications, the free assessment and placement tools, the research tools, and the text analysis tools. So this is sort of the second hour, we'll be talking a lot more about those things. But before I go on, I just maybe should take a pause and see if there are any questions or comments. So let me stop the screen share.
Charles, I would like to, there is like a question. So from Caitlin, she's saying, how do the word list, the academic one, deals with the words that have multiple meanings? For example, capital, interest in business and finance.
No, at this point, it doesn't deal with that. That's left to the teachers and the publishers. What we're doing in our first run through. You can see this is a work in progress. Most of our word lists have multiple iterations, but in our first run through the corpus, what we're doing is basically trying to identify what are the most frequent words in that genre. So for our academic corpus, we're trying to identify which are the most frequent occurrences, not necessarily identifying which is the most important meaning sense. Now that work has been done for some of our word lists. We've done it for the new general service list and in some of the applications and some of the books that are out there are identifying the most important meaning senses and ranking the meaning senses. But to my knowledge, that hasn't been done for the academic word list yet, although I might be wrong because a lot of people are utilizing these lists and may have already done the work and just not published it.
Okay, Charles, because time is passing by, I think we can move on and show us like the web tools that we can use.
Okay, let me go back to sharing screen. Actually, let me stop. Let me stop the share for a second. Hold on a second. How do I do that? Let's see. Let's see. I have to hold on a second. Share and then stop share. Now, I realized that I created a new resource. We just put it out a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to put in a slide about that resource, in this PowerPoint. So let me see if I can demonstrate it live. It's a pretty cool resource. Let me pull up newgeneralservicelist.org. Okay, so I've now got. Let me do a screen share of. Let's see. Hold on a second. New general service list. Share sound. Okay. Okay, so everybody can see this, right? This is now the new general service list project website. And one of the latest resources that we've published, it's a pretty cool one. If you go to the left-hand side, you can see all of our word lists are free and downloadable, but we also have lots and lots of tools that are free and downloadable as well. And one of the latest ones is called the Ngsl Glossary. And if you click on here's just sort of a cover page explaining it. And what the glossary looks like is this: it has the word, part of speech, frequency per million, some pronunciation data, and then the definitions. But it does actually much more than that. We're utilizing a website called Uglish, which is like a video concordance website. And what I'm showing you now, this is the entire new general service list. And let me see. Is there any words that look kind of academic-y? Let's see. I just want to pull up an example at random. Let's say I don't know, effect or agent. Let's see. Agreement. I just have to pick a word. Sorry. Sometimes it's so many good words. Let's take alternative. Okay. So now if I click on alternative, oops, hold on a second. Geez, we had a problem here. I know why. I clicked on the wrong link. Okay, there we go. Okay, accept. Okay, so now what we can see here is how the Uglish site says how to pronounce alternative in English. And it says 1 out of 21,773. What this website does is it gives you more than 20,000 examples of alternative being pronounced in authentic video clips. And it's a clip list builder. So let me just play it for you.
With them an alternative universe, to make people, to bring them into your world, to suck them into your...
Okay, let's see.
The wind in our faces leaves us no alternative but to live in the moment.
Make that choice. I think there is an alternative. I think
that there's an alternative way of raising taxes, that we're not really faced with a budget crisis.
The alternative is just unacceptable.
I researched alternative medicines, diets, juicing, acupuncture.
Okay, so you get the idea. Now, basically what this website is, what we've done with our video glossary is, we've just created, this is exactly what the NGSL project does, is we try to create free resources where we do a lot of the legwork, and then you can try to utilize them in the classroom as teaching tools, or students can utilize them as learning tools. And this glossary, it has the English definitions that we provided, the pronunciation files, and then this click to, you can click and instantly be inside this video glossary for any word. And so that's yet another one of the new general service list resources. So let me go back to sharing screen now, and let me see Microsoft PowerPoint, share. Okay. So let's see. Where I need to get my, sorry, I just want to get my Zoom window back. Okay, here, now I can see your faces. Okay. Okay. Yes? Okay, so we've now talked about all of the word lists, and what I want to do is briefly show you some of the assessment tools, because word lists become far more useful if you have a good assessment tool. Students already know a lot of these words, and so what we need to do is to figure out ways to remove some of those known words so that they're only having to study the unknown words, basically filling in the blanks. And one of the great resources we have is called the New General Service List Test, and also the New Academic Word List Test. And these are tests that were created by two researchers based in Japan, Phil Bennett and Tim Stokel. And they've written more than a dozen articles on these tests. So they have very high reliability, high validity. They measure knowledge of the academic word list and the general service list very, very well. And it's basically a stratified random sampling style test of each of the word lists. The new general service list, it does it in 5 equal sized bands of 560 words. And then I believe the academic word list is in 4 bands. And it just helps you as a teacher and the student as a learner to find out which frequency band they're strongest at and which frequency band they're weakest at. In this case, on the right-hand side, you can see this is one of my students, a student training to become an English teacher, that she has decent knowledge of NGSL level 1, 2, and 3, and very good knowledge of level 5, but has a weakness at level 4. And this is actually a pattern that I saw coming up quite often in Japan. But what we do based on this test is that we identify what their weakest band is. And GSL level 4 is about 2,000 word level, maybe 1,800 word level to 2,300 word level. And then this test would lead the students to online flashcards that are at exactly that level so that they can study just the level 4 words. So the test is like a diagnostic or a placement test. Is another way of calling it, and diagnostic and placement tests have similar functions, and it helps you to identify where they're weakest. And then we've also created tools so that you can send the students right to resources that help them attack those weaknesses. I also have an app that I developed with Rob Waring, who's very well known in the field of extensive reading, and we developed both extensive reading websites and also vocabulary learning tools together. And the vocabulary learning tool that probably most people know about is called Word Learner, which has all of our word lists, but it also has placement tests and achievement tests built into the app. So that's something worth looking at. It's on both the App Store and Apple Store and Android. The learning tools, there are so many of them. We've tried to utilize existing free tools when possible, and we've created our own as well. Probably the first one that I utilized back in 2013 is called Quizlet, and probably many of you have heard of it. It's an excellent free flashcard website, but it's more than a flashcard website. I'm not sure if I have slides in here. No, I don't. But Quizlet has the ability for you to upload any word stack you want, and then the students will study those words via not only flashcards, but also via games. So there's matching games. There's like concentration where you race against the clock. There's audio races where you listen. You have to type out the word. There's about 7 altogether different ways of interacting with the word. So it's a very robust kind of a website, and all of our word lists are up on Quizlet. But because our word lists are very well known around the world, I would suggest, if you are going to use Quizlet for our word lists, that you should access Quizlet from our website. And the reason I say that is that if you go directly to Quizlet and type in NGSL, there are probably, I don't even want to count, but thousands of NGSL stacks in every different language you can imagine, and the quality of the definitions and the stacks are going to vary widely. The ones that we've created are pretty carefully constructed, and are probably a good starting point would be to look for the flashcard resources from the new General Service List website I showed you before. It's called ngsl.org. Another free website that we utilize is called Memrise. Memrise.com it's like Quizlet in that it has flashcards. It differs from Quizlet. Number one, it doesn't have the games. So Quizlet is excellent because it has the games, but Memrise has something that Quizlet doesn't, and that is that Memrise allows students to personalize, to individualize their flashcards. So, for example, if we go to the NGSL stack, you can see, for example, at the 2200 word level, one of the words is the word trail. And the definition we have in Memrise is a path through the countryside, often where people walk. Now, if you click on that in Memrise, you get a flashcard with a word and a definition. But you also get a little box that says, help me to learn this, add a meme. And if you click on that box, you can personalize your flashcard. In this case, I'm taken to what looks like a Google Images type of place. And what I do is I click on the image that to me seems to remind me most of the word trail. And so I click the one in the upper right. And then what happens is I'm able to modify. I can add the picture, and I even to add my own definition. I wrote a place to walk in the woods. And so that's one of the nice things about Memrise, is that you can personalize it. Kahoot is another very nice interactive kind of quiz-oriented software. I'm not sure. Yeah. So I do. So for example, the Toeic word list is up on Kahoot. And what Kahoot does is I'm not sure if I have a slide that shows it well, but what Kahoot does is that every student takes out their cell phone, and the teacher uses a projector and projects on the screen at the front of the room a word and 3 possible definitions or 4 possible definitions. And then students race to try and choose the correct definition quicker than any other student. And the quicker you answer with the right answer, the more points you get. So it's kind of a race. And it's a very fun and motivating way to practice our word lists. So I think Kahoot is very nice as well. Now, Kahoot and Memrise and Quizlet are all really nice because they're very, very attractive interfaces. They're very nicely done. They work with any word stack, including all of my words stacks, but any of yours as well. So they're really good in that sense. If you have a specialized list of words or just words you want to teach for 1 week, related to an academic article that you're teaching, all of these work well with that. And at least Quizlet deals with multiple aspects of word knowledge, which is great. But one of the weaknesses that I found is that these don't allow for multiple repetitions, and they don't take into consideration the science of spaced repetition and time interval learning. And also there's not much contextualization as well. So What I mean by spaced repetition and time interval learning is the problem. We're talking about the problem of short-term memory loss. If students study words for a quiz in your class, and you assign them on a Friday, you say, okay, next Friday you're going to have a quiz on these 20 words. Students are, they're not going to study until Thursday night, and Thursday night or Friday morning. And so Friday morning, they know they're going to have a quiz in an hour. So they study frantically and they study those 20 words and they get a good score on the quiz because they crammed right before the quiz. But the problem is that kind of studying usually leads to very quick memory loss of the information, because the information is only stored in short-term memory. And there's been a lot of research over the years going back pre-1900s. Ebbinghaus first identified what's called the forgetting curve, but in the 1960s, the Pimsleur method was developed. Leitner systems in the 70s. I became aware of this when I was a graduate student reading an article by Mondria. And what they all of these people identified is that if you study something only once, you tend to forget it very quickly. And what you can see is on the left-hand side of this graph, your memory, when you study it once, immediately after you finish studying, your memory is at 100%, but over 24 hours, that's the one at the bottom, 1, 3, 10, 30, 90, those are days. So after one day, just one day, more than half of the information that you studied will be completely gone forever. Because it's lost in short-term memory. But what all of these people found, is that if you study it a second time, 24 hours later, you go back up to 100%, but now instead of taking 1 day to forget, it takes 3 days to forget. And after 3 days, if you study it again, it takes 10 days to forget. And so the forgetting curve flattens out until after about 4 or 5 repetitions, you've changed short-term memory into near permanent long-term memory. So the article I read by Mondria, he described a physical set of boxes that you would set out one box for 1 day review, another box for 3 day review, another for 10, 30, and 90. And what you would do is the new words go in the start box. And after you study it and get it right, you put it into the next box 1 day. And then 1 day later, you go to the next box. And if you get it right, you put it into the 3 day box. And 3 days later, you go to that box and study it again and put it into the 10-day box. 10 days later, you study it again. But at any time, if you get the word wrong, the word that you get wrong goes all the way back to the beginning. So the words that you get wrong, you get a lot of repetition until you start getting it right. And the words that you get right consistently, the interval increases 1 day, 3 days, 10 days, 30 days, 90 days, and eventually permanent memory is acquired. And so Mondria back in 1994 was describing physical boxes. And I was a graduate student and I was also into online learning. I thought, well, gee, I don't want to have boxes, but what if I automated this? What if I created a software to automate this? And that was one of my first attempts at creating software. And the original software I developed was for the old GSL list, because the new general services wasn't developed until 2013. But I originally created something called Ngsl Builder for the old GSL. And then when we created our new list, we created something called the NGSL Builder, and New General Service List. And what you see here is now on the left-hand side, you can see the NGSL in bands of 100 by frequency. And the students select the words they want to study. They get a word, the definition is hidden. And then they try and remember what the definition is, and then the definition is shown. If they get it right, it moves from 1 day to 3 days. If they get it wrong, it goes back to new again. And so it's basically the box system, but it's handled automatically by the software. And so over about 4 or 5 years, I ended up creating 16 different apps because I wanted one for English and one for Japanese and one for Android and one for Apple. And so for every word list, we had to have 4 apps. And eventually I had 16 apps, and it was just getting too expensive because I didn't get any sort of research money for this. I was just doing it out of pocket, and it just became too complicated to stay on top of. So after the first 16 apps, I started working together with Rob Waring, and Rob and I put our heads together and we came up with the Word Learner app. So now the Word Learner app is the one that has all of our word lists. It also has a learner dictionary we developed, a learner management system, the placement tests, and interface in about a dozen languages now. So that's a pretty good app. Rob and I also, as I said, one of the weaknesses of the flashcards is that it didn't do spaced repetition, and that's what Word Learner and Ngsl Builder does, is it adds the repetition, the spaced repetition. But the other problem, as I said, is lack of contextualization. Flashcard apps lack contextualization, and that's why so many of us are in the field of vocabulary are also proponents of extensive reading. So Rob Waring and I created a free website that promotes extensive reading called ER Central. ER is for extensive reading. And on that website, we have more than 1,000 free graded reading stories, 1,000 free graded listening stories, and a way for you to do vocabulary learning from those stories. We've got the whole website is at 16 different levels. No, I'm sorry, 20 levels. It's about 20 levels. And we've created a very simple self-assessment placement tool so that students can be reading at the right level. Once they've figured out their level, in this case, the student has selected level 10, then we start suggesting level 10 books for them. And the idea is that they would read books that are easy to read and books that they're interested in, and that would promote learning. Okay, so that's the extensive reading, extensive listenings, a couple of screenshots. That's the sort of the reading interface. That's the, you can click on any word. We have an HTML dictionary. There's a little green box that says save the word, and that means that any word that you've looked up then becomes something that you can study in flashcard stacks. So there's vocabulary learning as well. A lot of publishers are now utilizing our word list as well. So if you go to various publishers and search for NGSL, you can probably find some books there for you. Another thing I wanted to introduce is the analytical tools, because I think these are really important and really useful for a variety of purposes, both teaching as well as for research. Now, most of our word lists are on these tools now, and I think they can be of quite good use to you. The OGTE tool is something that Rob Waring and I developed together. This is another free tool, yet another free resource. And what this OGTE tool does is it helps you to analyze and edit texts to a specific level using various word lists. So most of my word lists are up on OGTE, but also many other lists like the Cambridge list, the Cepher list, the Oxford list, as well as the original GSL and AWL. And it sort of shows you the words that are out of level and the percentage of coverage that the students would have if they know the word list. So for example, let me show you some screenshots to show you how that works. Here on the left, what you can see is that I'm using a pull down menu, and that's the first step, is to pull down and select the word list that you want to use for your analysis. In this case, I'm using the NGSL plus the business service list. And I'm selecting, let's see, it says BS in the right-hand screen, looks like BSL1. No, actually, I think I just select the NGSL in the next slide. So what we're seeing here is I've taken the whole first chapter of the first book of Harry Potter, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I put it into the OGTE tool, and I selected the entire new general service list, and I wanted to see what kind of coverage the new general service list would provide for Harry Potter. And what you can see is that once we've excluded proper nouns, we're close to 94% coverage, which means that this text would be appropriate for students in my university, because they know most of the words in the new general service list, and we get almost 95% coverage. So the tool uses color coding. You can see the pink are the proper nouns, the green are the ones that we've ignored, the black are the ones that are in list, and then you can see the coverage figures as well. The tool is actually quite provides a lot more detail than I'm showing you. There's if you're a researcher and you're trying to research on text, there's many other things that you can do with this tool, but this is sort of the broad strokes. Now, if we go on and use the business service list, which is a special purpose word list, you can do the same thing for academic English as well. But what we see here is the NGSL plus the BSL covering a political article. We're getting about 95% coverage, which is pretty good. But the business service list should actually get a little bit better. And indeed, when we go and look at an article from a business website, this is Entrepreneur, which is really more focused on business. Now you can see the coverage is jumping up to about 97, more than 97%. So NGSL plus BSL is giving that kind of coverage. So the OGT tool allows you to sort of analyze how much coverage each word list gives you for a text. And the OGT tool, where I got the idea for that tool, is based on a tool that was originally developed by Paul Nation in the 1980s. Paul Nation developed a tool called Range in the 1980s. And eventually it was updated to be not a software that you installed. Back in the 80s, you had to install software into your computer. But my friend in Canada, Tom Cobb, has spent his whole career developing free HTML-based corpus analysis tools. And one of the first things he did was he created a tool called Vocab Profile, which is basically an update of Paul Nation's Range program. And my OGTE tool is just an update of Vocab Profile. It's the same idea, but I think the OGT is just a little bit easier to use. But if we click on Vocab Profile at his website, Complete Lex Tutor, then you get a kind of an open box, and I've just popped in Harry Potter into there as well. And at the top right, you can see NGSL NAWL. We've selected it, and you click the yellow submit window, and you get a nice color-coded readout. The first NGSL1 are the blue words. At the top, NGSL1 means the first 1,000 most frequent NGSL words. You can see that gives about 80.85% coverage. NGSL2 is the green words, brings it up to 86. And NGSL3 brings it up to 88. And then the red words are the words that are supposedly difficult for students. So Vocab Profile really gives you a nice visual. Probably, I think this is easier to read than OGT, the bottom part. But the problem is the interface is not. That's what gets complicated for people. But if you look, my tool said the NGSL gives NGSL gives 93% coverage of Harry Potter. Here, we're only getting 88%. And the reason is, if you look at the red words, there are many proper nouns. Like first line is Dursley, and then you see Dursley and Dudley and Potter as in Harry Potter, and many times Potters and Potter. The Vocab Profile doesn't automatically remove proper nouns. My OGT tool, we have about a 90,000 word proper noun database. So a lot of that is done automatically. But here, what you have to do is you have to go back. You have to hit the back button and go back to the before you do the analysis, and then start right-clicking on all of the proper nouns. And as you right-click, what I've done here, you can see Harry and Potter and Dudley and Dursley. I've just picked 6 or 7. And it's not all of the proper nouns, but I picked 6 or 7 of the most frequent proper nouns and double clicked on them and then reanalyzed. And now you can see up to about 93%. So OGT does that step automatically for you, but this tool does it as well. You just have to do it by hand. There's also another, I don't have a screenshot of it, but there's another very good tool like this called AntWord Profiler by Lawrence Anthony, another good friend of mine. And it does the same kind of thing as these two tools, but it allows you to upload your own lists. And the new general service list is on that on that tool as well. So that's yet another analytical tool. Okay, so we're at 8:30. And I just wanted to quickly show just a few slides of some of the, there's dozens of articles on our word list, but I just wanted to show you a couple of quick findings. I think I've alluded to some of them already. We found, for example, that the Toeic test was changed in 2018. A brand new version of the Toeic test came out in Korea and Japan, and then was implemented worldwide. And our Toeic list was published in 2015 or 2016. And we wanted to make sure that our old Toeic list was still working for the new version of the Toeic test. And what we found is, indeed, yes, 98.5%. So not quite 99%, but 98.5% even for the latest version. So still, the list is very good for the latest version of the Toeic exam. There was an article published just last year looking at the National Center exam in Japan, which is one of the most important high-stakes exams of English in Japan for young learners. And they found that the NGSL is giving 95% coverage for examinations that were used between 2015 and 2019. So basically, that means that not only is the NGSL very good for general English in the real world, but it's also giving very good coverage for high stakes exams as well. And the same thing is true for senior high school entrance exam and national center test. 98% for the high school exam and 95% for the center test. So another research article by Iwamoto and Kramer. We also found that there was also a publication by Hendy in 2018 that was talking about the usefulness of the new academic word list. And they found that the new general service list plus the new academic word list was giving quite good 90% coverage for abstracts in all 12 of the ERA subject matter divisions. So that means that, you know, it's giving pretty good coverage out in the real world as well. So that was nice to see. Some of my graduate students, this is a couple years ago, we had a big vocabulary conference at my university. And so two of my graduate students were invited to present on some research they were doing. They weren't specializing in vocabulary, they were specializing in other areas, but they loved my class on vocabulary, and they did some pretty interesting research. One of them looked at coverage of the NGSL for Star Wars, and another looked at the coverage of NGSL for the TV show Friends. And the reason for that was an article that we were reading in our course by Norbert Schmidt and Tom Cobb and Marlies Horst and Diane Schmidt. They were theorizing that coverage figures should be higher for listening materials than for written materials. And basically the theory was that 95% coverage is enough for listening comprehension, and the theory was that this should be able to be done with less than 3,000 word families, which is much more reasonable. So I said to my students, I showed them all of these corpus tools that we were working with, and I showed a few more, like the keyword extractor, which you're seeing on this page. I said, well, hey, listen, let's see if the NGSL is able to hit that target. We don't know. Nobody has ever published that yet. And so what they did is I said, just pick whatever you like. What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite TV show? And one student did Star Wars and the other did Friends. And so the student who did Star Wars basically created a corpus from Star Wars Episode 1. And what they did is they began to analyze what kind of coverage they could get by the NGSL. So in order to do this, they downloaded an unofficial transcript from online and then did the analysis. But the problem is that when you do an analysis of an unofficial transcript with the vocab profile tool, the NGSL was providing only 70% coverage, which is horrible. I mean, that's horrible. That's way below any of the thresholds we talked about. So the the problem is that transcripts have stage directions, right? Like, for example, Darth Vader walks into the room and looks very angry. You don't hear that when you're watching the movie. So they had to remove all the stage directions, and they had to remove all the spelling errors in the transcript as well. And once they had done that, the coverage jumped from 60 to 87%, so plus 17%. But the next step after that with vocab profile is to remove proper nouns, because it's not done automatically with this tool. And that brought brought coverage up to nearly 91% coverage. NGSL giving 91% coverage for after you remove proper nouns. He did the analysis for the academic word list, and not surprisingly, it offered very little coverage because it's science fiction, it's not academic English, but he did the analysis anyway and saw that it only gave an extra 1%. So that was taken out. And then what we did is we used a really cool tool. If you don't know it, you should check it out. This is also on Tom Cobb's website. It's called the Keyword Extractor. And what the Keyword Extractor does is it compares the frequency of words in your text with the frequency of words as they occur in general English. And it identifies the words in your text that are much more frequent, like basically low frequency words in general English, but are frequent in your text. And these become very good, basically potentially good words for teaching. And so we used the keyword tool on Star Wars and came up with a list of about 40 or 50 words that were very, very frequent in Star Wars, but not in general English. Words like viceroy and handmaiden and blockade and bravo and apprentice and chancellor, Chancellor Palpatine, right? Galaxy, battleship. So these words, actually, if you've watched the movie, they are very important to understand that movie. And so what he did is he added 36 keywords that added an additional 2% coverage, and compare that to the academic word list. Academic word list, 900 words, only 1%. The keywords, 36 words, 2%. So quite good. And then what we did is we went and looked at the so-called off-list words and found that there were actually some more keywords hidden in there. And we were able to find about 30 or 40 more words that give another 2% coverage. So we were adding 4% coverage just for 74 more words, which is quite good. So basically, he was able to get 95% coverage with only the NGSL plus 73 more words. And then what he did is he took those 73 words and he put them up on Quizlet so that people who like Star Wars and were studying the NGSL could understand Star Wars with just studying less than 100 words. So what we found was positive support for that article, which said that non-native speakers can get 95% with less than 3,000 words. In this case, 2874. And that was kind of nice. He was pretty proud of that. Another student looked at the TV show Friends and did a similar. I'm not going to take you through the whole analysis, but basically, actually did a lot more work because did the whole season 1. So it was 4 hours and a half of video. Probably the transcript was triple the size of the Star Wars transcript, and more different headwords. But what they found, and maybe it's not surprising, is that the NGSL gives much higher coverage for Friends than for Star Wars, because Star Wars is science fiction and Friends is a TV show that uses a lot of general English, which is the NGSL. And so what he got is the NGSL just by itself gives almost 95% coverage for Friends. And if you add 40 more keywords, you're up to like 98% coverage. So it's pretty good. Okay, so yeah, in both cases they found support for that. So what I'm going to do, there's so many other slides and resources that we've developed, but this is just a quick overview of our 7 word lists and the main free resources. There are other ones as well, and basically what I tried to do here was to describe how you can take a modular approach to systematically developing vocabulary hopefully getting them above those 90% thresholds with far less than the 30,000 words that native speakers have. We're, in almost all cases, we're down, we're getting above 90% with somewhere between 3,800 and 4,500 words. So pretty small vocabulary size, but pretty high coverage. And so the idea here for me, what I saw in Japan was students not having enough vocabulary words. The words they were studying were test English, so they were the wrong kind of vocabulary words, and the reading materials were too difficult for them. So we've just spent the past 10 years developing corpus-based word lists and extensive reading resources, and hoping to help students and teachers and researchers to kind of do something better for their students. So with that, I'll stop. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm more than happy to take them. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. That was very interesting indeed. Do you have any questions? We only have probably like 5 minutes because obviously lots of people had to go to teach. So
Oh, sorry.
We have a reduced number, yeah. But yeah, if any questions in the chat, something we can address? Anyone? Okay, Martin is asking, I want to start a corpus for law. Where do I start?
A corpus for law. Okay, well, it depends. Again, it depends what your purpose is. So I've helped professors at universities to develop special purpose word lists for their university. So for example, if you're in a department of law and there are 12 full-time professors and 20 part-time professors in that department, what I would do is to do a survey, find out what materials, what books that they're using in those courses, what journal articles, what magazines, what they're asking the students to read, and make a corpus from those specific materials. And then what I would do is to find out what the highest frequency words were in that corpus, remove the new general service list words, and then the remaining words, teach them in order of frequency, and you would have a very tight, very short list of just several hundred words that, when combined with NGSL, would give dramatically high coverage for law materials that are taught in the classrooms.
Thank you. There's also a question from Catherine. I'm not sure if you can see in the chat. In the test of written receptive knowledge of the NGSL, what level should students score in order to be considered? For example, at B2 level, is there a rating like that?
Okay, now that's actually a tough question. We've done some private correlation studies between the NGSL and the CEFR levels, and of course there's a good correlation. But the problem is that CEFR, the way it handles vocabulary, it wasn't primarily designed to handle vocabulary, but there is, especially the big publishers, I think Pearson and Cambridge have created online tools to that basically state that these are the vocabulary words for B1 level, these are the vocabulary words for C2 level. The problem is that the numbers are just huge. You're talking by C1 level, probably 15 or 20,000 words, which is a very unrealistic goal for most EFL learners. So what our focus it has not been primarily to align with CEFR, even though it does align with CEFR. Our focus is to create very short, very tight lists that are going to get students above that 90% threshold as quickly as possible. So it's not easy to say directly, what level you would be at if you studied only the NGSL, because there are many other words, even at the lower levels of CEFR, that are not in the NGSL, and that's actually by design. Oh, sorry, Jolanta, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much. Just looking in the chat box, we've received lots of lovely messages and lots of good feedback, great feedback, in fact. So, very interesting session, very informative and very practical, as Manny said. So, thank you again, Charles. It was really nice having you here, and thank you for sharing your work, your experience. Very, very useful for so many teachers involved in so many different areas of English language teaching. Indeed.
No, my pleasure. And if these resources can help even one teacher, then I'm very, very happy. So thank you very much for the chance to talk about our work with you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Our pleasure. Thank you very much. Okay, just one last thing. If any of you needs the certificate of attendance, I think Penny already sent, but I'm just going to copy and paste again. Okay, so this is to